See people coming in, which is great. Almost 100 folks already. All right. Well, we won't waste too much time here. We've got Katie. Katie, what's the M for, by the way? I didn't even notice that before.
It is, well, it's a long story, quite frankly. When
We
I got
have a whole
married,
hour. This is what we're here
yeah.
for.
It is actually my birth name is Mary. I changed my name when I got married. It's M. Katie now. It's like a whole thing.
I see. I like it. I like it. It's mysterious. I feel like I should have a first initial before my name. It'd be more sophisticated. Well, appreciate everybody taking the time. Today, we're going to talk about workflows, which is, a great topic. I do see we already have a hand up. One thing I will say in the beginning is anytime we're talking about like firm best practices, this is going to be a little less focused on Juno. So this isn't like a sales session. Actually, Katie is going to be driving most of what we talk about today. And I think it'd be great. And I just want to openly invite folks to chat as we go along. I'll be kind of watching the chat for questions or comments. Um, this is such a great topic for us. And I know, Katie, I actually thought it was funny. You have a quote in here later that is near and dear to my heart because I see it all the time, not just in tax, but with anything related to automation. And AI enables automation in a really different way. Um, but the human component of that is something that kind of everyone is grappling with right now. And you probably, I'll give you, and I'm just kind of wasting the first couple minutes here while people roll in, but I'll give you like the funny thing that I laugh about in the news, which is like every other article is like AI is going to be the greatest thing ever, or it's showing zero ROI and like we're going to shut it all down. And I always laugh because like you'll have the same like Fortune or something will have like both articles in one day. And the thing is, I think both are true. Right. And so the one thing I just wanted to say before, and I'll let Katie introduce herself right now, once we waste 30 more seconds, is technology is moving faster than it ever has, but our human behavior has to change to realize the benefits from that. And so that is a real thing, and why actually both can be true, that this can be incredible technology and it can add no value at the same time. So with that kind of teaser, Katie, do you want to switch over and do your introduction for everybody? Tell them a little bit about your firm and your background now that we know your
Yeah,
first name. That is,
yeah.
and
Yeah, so I want to go ahead and say that, like Dave said, this isn't really about software. It's about building the kind of firm you actually want to own. Because if you're anything like me and you've probably finished a tax season or two or three and thought there has to be a better way, or I'm never doing this again, or maybe you've attended conferences recently, watched webinars, or listened to podcasts and found a dozen different ideas that promise to make tax season easier. Then January arrived, the phone started ringing, and emails started coming in. Clients needed answers, and your team was overwhelmed. Suddenly, you have to learn a new software, and that became tomorrow's problem. I'm sure you all can relate, and you are definitely not alone. So, for those of you that have not met me, my name is Katie Healy. I'm the owner of Scaled Accounting Solutions, a boutique tax accounting and advisory firm based in Chandler, Arizona. Before launching my firm nearly 2 years ago, I served 15 years in public accounting. In those first 15 years, I learned that I loved serving clients. I loved helping business owners, but I didn't love what our profession had convinced me was normal. Long hours, busy seasons that seemed endless, missing family dinners, feeling like my work always came before the people I cared about most. Eventually, I reached the point where I asked myself one simple question: what if there was a better way? When I started my own firm, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to recreate the same firm I had just left. I wanted to build a business that worked around my life and my family, not the other way around. That became the filter for every decision I've made, every client process, every technology investment, every workflow, every hire, everything came back to the one question: does this help me build the firm I actually want? Now, here's what's interesting. Today, we have more technology available than ever before. Every week, there's another AI platform, another automation tool, another promise to save us hours of work. But at the same time, our profession is navigating tremendous change. The AICPA's most recent top firms issues survey identified managing technology and AI related change as the number one long term issue facing CPA firms today. Think about that for a minute. Not tax law, not staffing, not regulation, change. And honestly, that doesn't surprise me at all because after talking with firm owners across the country the last couple of years, I've realized something. Most firms don't struggle because they buy bad software. They struggle because implementing change inside a busy accounting practice is hard. Technology rarely fails because of technology. It usually fails because of how it's introduced to the firm. So today, I'm not here to convince you that you need another piece of software. Whether you decide Juno is right for your firm or whether you decide right now is not the right time, that's completely okay. My goal is much simpler. I want to give you a practical framework for successfully introducing change into your firm because I've learned something over the last couple of years. Technology amplifies great systems, it doesn't create them. And once you understand that, everything changes because automation isn't the hard part, change is. I've watched a lot of software webinars over the years. They're great. You learn features, you see the workflows, you watch someone click through the product, and by the end, you think, holy cow, that's so cool. But when you close your laptop, you go back to your office and nothing changes. Not because the software wasn't good, but because no one talked about what happens after you sign up for the software. How do you get your team excited? What do you do when someone says, this is how we've always done it? When you implement change, who should own it? How do you know if it's actually working? Those are questions that I wish someone had answered for me when I started digging into technology years ago. Because I'll be honest, when I started my own firm, I wasn't afraid of technology. Quite the opposite, rather. I'm an early adopter. I love technology. If there's a new tool that might improve our workflow, I usually want to try it out. Last summer, when I learned about Juno, I didn't need much convincing. I immediately saw the opportunity, not because I thought it would magically solve all of my problems, but because I believed it could eliminate repetitive work that didn't require my team's expertise. I wanted my staff spending more time thinking, less time typing, more time reviewing, more time serving clients. But here's what I learned. Buying software is the easiest part of the entire process. Making it part of your firm's daily habits, that's where the work begins. And that's true whether you're talking Juno, your practice management software, your document storage, or the next AI tool that comes out next month. The software isn't what determines success. Your implementation strategy is. I'll also admit something else. Even though I started my firm with a modern technology from day one, my first tax season still felt very overwhelming with the unexpected growth. I had cloud storage, digital workflows, automation, and still I found myself wondering, why does this have to be so hard? That's when I realized something that completely changed the way I think about technology. Technology doesn't create capacity, great systems create capacity. Technology simply makes those systems better. That realization is how I evaluate technology today. And that's really the foundation for everything I'm going to share with you for the remainder of our time here. So before we talk about
Yes,
success,
one quick thing,
oh
Katie, I'll comment on there. By the way, I got some AI love in the chat, which is great, and I do also write emails with AI quite often.
yeah.
I just I actually love writing emails with AI. It's less stressful for me, so I'm like a total I team jokes about it, but I write almost all emails with AI if it's more than like two sentences. But that being said, I think I just want to underscore what you're talking about there. I mean, one, the importance of starting a firm to kind of reflect your life and the life you want. It's funny, my mom, I bought my original firm from my mom, who's a CPA, and she did the exact same thing, which is probably part of why she got to spend some time at home. So I benefited from that even before I ended up buying the firm from her. But you said something I think very casually, which is like the lifestyle. Like you didn't want to accept basically, right, the lifestyle that this industry can put on you. And
Mhm.
I do want to underscore that. I think it's just a huge deal to like build a firm to serve yourself, and the life that you want. And I know you'll talk a little bit later about overtime and working more than 40 hours. And my firm now, for the second season in a row, there's not anyone working overtime, which is incredible if you've got a family. You mentioned kind of family dinners, right? And particularly if you
Mhm.
have kids, you have a family, that kind of thing. Like the lifestyle can be there, even during tax season. Like that is the goal, I think, and it will become achievable if you've got your processes in the right place, believe it or not. And that's not a Juno statement. It's just a statement about, the technology is starting to be there, both in terms of practice management and then how you can automate out of that. So anyways, just want to underscore that part there for folks.
Yeah. So before we talk about how to successfully implement automation, let's talk about why so many firms struggle with technology adoption in the first place. Because once we understand that, the solution honestly is much clearer. So let's start with a question in the chat. How many of you have ever said something like, "We bought the software, we just haven't had time to implement it yet"? I honestly think every firm owner at some point has said
And
that.
folks can answer in chat, by the
Yeah,
way.
in chat,
Yeah.
in chat. Yeah. And here's what's interesting. When I
Yep.
hear someone say that, I don't think they bought,
Unanimous so far, by the way.
yeah, I don't think they bought the wrong software. I think I think something got in the way of the change because after talking with so many firm owners over the past few years, there's definitely a trend. Firms that are successful with technology aren't using different software. They're just approaching the implementation differently. Software usually isn't the problem, the process is. And I see this pattern over and over again. So let's walk through them. The first one, the shiny object syndrome. We all laugh because we've all been there. You've attended a conference, you've seen 10 amazing products. Every booth has a line, every demo promises to save you time. Every speaker says, "This changed my firm." I even say that. And then suddenly you're thinking, "I need all of it." Trust me, I've been there. Technology is so exciting, especially right now with AI evolving so quickly. But here's the challenge. Every new piece of technology competes for one thing: attention. Not money, not time. Every implementation requires learning, training, practice, questions, mistakes. And if your team is trying to learn 5 new tools, they usually will not master any of them. Everything at once. This is the second mistake, trying to change everything at the same time. I've seen firms decide this year we're going to move to a new practice management system. And while we're at it, let's change tax software, document storage, and let's add automation and let's implement AI. That is a recipe for disaster. Your practice management software is the foundation of how moves through your firm. The foundation is that if that foundation is changing, another major implementation only increases complexity for your team. One major operational change at a time is almost always leading to better long-term adoption. The third mistake, expecting immediate results. I'll admit, when we invest in technology, we all secretly hope that it saves time from day one, but that rarely is how change works. Think about hiring a new employee. You don't expect someone to start on Monday and be fully productive by Wednesday, do you? Technology is no different. There's a learning curve, there's training, there's refinement. The return comes after the team develops confidence, not before. This one might be my biggest recommendation. Please do not implement major software change in January. January is when we are trying to survive, not learn. Many firms who struggle with adoption of new software onboarded during tax season. By then, the pressure's already on. There's no room for excitement, no room to ask questions, no room to make mistakes. Extension season is completely different. This is when I onboarded Juno and a lot of my other softwares. My team had room to breathe. They can learn, practice, build confidence. By the time busy season arrives, the technology feels familiar instead of foreign. Next, people naturally resist change they don't understand. If we simply tell our teams, here's a new tool, start using it Monday, good luck, they're going to ask themselves a question of why. If we don't answer that, they're going to create their own answer. Usually something like, is this replacing my job? Or why are we changing something that's already working? Leadership isn't just introducing new software, it's communicating why the change matters. Finally, fear. Not fear of technology, fear of disruption, something that's already working. Even if the process isn't perfect, it's familiar and it feels safe. I've learned something over the last couple of years. Most people don't resist change because they're difficult. They resist change because of uncertainty. Our job as leaders is to reduce uncertainty, not eliminate it. Just reduce it enough so people are willing to take the next step. In the comments, let's hear which one of those stood out the most to you. When you step back and look at all 6 of these challenges, none of them are actually software problems. They're leadership problems, communication problems, planning problems, timing problems, people problems. And that's actually really good news because those things we can improve. Dave, which one's some of the comments?
Yeah, I've seen everything at once is so far the early leader. Well, I just wanted to make a comment on that, just for us to reflect for just a second that we see this all the time, where like a firm owner, will come and buy Juno, right? And then, I mean, by the way, January is our largest sales month, which is completely insane, and I'm 100% aligned with you on not onboarding in the beginning of tax season. There's also a different, unique technical reason for that, which is your tax software doesn't release until the very end of January. So if you do buy at that point, you also can't onboard and work on current returns because you like literally they haven't released the new software. And so by definition, you're trying to go back and like do historical returns, and people just aren't that good at making up new work for them to do when they're already like pretty busy. And so we see people underestimate the learning curve for the staff. But the one thing I wanted to echo that I think you said that's just incredibly true, especially is if you hand something off to your staff, like the removing the fear. So think about if I'm a preparer on staff, like one of my preparers, for example, I'm not supposed to make any mistakes. If I make mistakes, I'm worried about losing my job, right? Like for my whole career, I've been focused on doing work with perfect accuracy. And then
Yeah.
you hand me a tool that like could make me faster, but I don't know how to use it and I don't know where it's going to make mistakes. And I'm supposed to figure out how to trust that tool to do part of my work. And this is not just a
Mhm.
Juno thing. This is true for any automation tool.
Yeah.
You need time to do that. And you're going to have to, like, the only way to learn that, I mean, obviously, like the tools can be designed to try to tell you where to look and so on and so forth. But you just have to go through some reps to do it. And I think that's why it's so critical that people onboard in the summer, or at least like in the beginning of Q4, where you still have some time to run through. Though in Q4 you don't have real returns typically, but you got time to run through like maybe some, redo a return from last year, right, with this system. And
Mhm.
and so I just want to say that out loud to folks of like you have to create space for your staff to understand how a new tool uses if you want to rely on that tool in the middle of tax season, because fundamentally, above everything else, we focus on productivity and accuracy as an industry. And like, no matter who your staff is, I guarantee those two things are very important to you. And if you go back and triple check every single thing with the new automation tool, they won't save any time. And we'll see that. And I saw it, we even had a few, I won't bore people with all the stories, but had a few firms that struggled to onboard in part because their staff just wasn't on board. I mean, they just were like, no, we don't want to do this. Like it makes it harder for me is kind of what we'll hear. And we'll be like, well, how many returns have you done? Well, three. I'm like, cool. How many have you done the old way? I'm like, well, I've been doing it for 15 years and I've done 200 returns a year. So like about 3,000 returns, and I'm like, okay, well, 3,000 versus three, like, of course it's slower for you right now.
Yeah.
But I want to say it out loud for folks just to really drive home that point. It is really important to be able to like set your staff up for success. I also, on the Everything at Once, which has continued to be the winner, I did my very first year when I bought my firm, I changed billing software, practice management software. I went from QuickBooks Desktop to online, and I switched our tax software. And my whole staff almost quit. I mean, they literally were like, "You're kind of nice, but I can't believe you did this to us." And it just was a hilarious mistake. So I have made that mistake as well, in a huge way. And then I basically said after that, like, I'm never going to change more than one key system in a given year. And even that, with practice management, it took us about 2 years to really absorb that well. And so I didn't change anything else during those 2 years because I was like, we're in the middle of digesting this other, software change. Let me see in the quotes real quick if there's anything else that came up there. But there was a question, Katie, on the like, let's see, what do you do with the, what do you like, what do change of input staff with automation solutions? I don't know if that's something that like, has that come up for you at all in terms of staffing changes as you ingest or like automation tools?
It does not come, it has not come up for me at
Yeah.
all. But again, I'm a small firm, so
Yeah.
the way we implement automation is not, and AI is not to, have staffing changes. I mean, everyone within our firm too is very eager to adopt it, even though it's painful sometimes with learning change.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's a really important thing. And I think as we start to hire, it's really important to kind of think about people that are willing to adopt technology.
Yeah.
That no question about that. There was a question too about implementing technology as the technology starts to rapidly change. Any thoughts on like how do you stay on top of kind of what the latest is for your practice management or Juno or kind of any of the technology you're using?
Yeah, actually, I do always stay up to date with learning like all the th tools that are out there for anybody to use. But I'm not and although I am an early adopter, if something is working in our firm, like let's say our practice management system, I'm not going to jump to a new one to learn, if it has some of the cool new trends that my current one doesn't have. And that's not because I don't want to, but it's also changing systems is very complex, very hard, and the learning curve can be very, very steep. And so for me, we want to hone in on the workflow within the firm for the smaller changes versus like big, big changes. I mean, I have a meeting later today where we're being asked to talk about our tech stack that we use during tax season, what we're looking to change for this upcoming tax season, what we're missing that we wish we had. And honestly, like I'm going into this with like, I'm really great. I'm really happy where we're at right now. Doesn't mean we're not constantly finding and tuning and looking at other solutions, but I'm also not going to jump every year to something new because that causes stress to the team.
Exactly. Yep. I think it's smart to have that kind of um, like caution basically
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, absolutely. So, if that's why technology implementation is a struggle, what does it successful implementation actually look like? So, that's the framework I want to share next with everybody. We've already talked about the mistakes. Now, I want those same lessons in a practical sequence. Everything I'm about to share comes from real experience. Some lessons I've learned by getting it right, some I've learned by getting it wrong, and some from conversations with firm owners I have talked with over the last couple of years, and also some who wish they could change things and start over. What I found is that successful firms don't necessarily move faster, they move in the right order. So this kind of goes back to what we just talked about, not moving fast, changing year after year with technology. That's the difference for me. So the first principle is probably the hardest for firm owners. One is to only make one major operational change at a time. That sounds simple. Dave's a prime example. In the year he changed all the things because we like momentum. We're excited. We want to improve everything. We've all been there. The problem is that any one of those ideas isn't a bad one. It's that your team only has so much capacity for learning. Every new system requires attention, training, questions, practice, confidence. When you stack multiple changes, you're asking your team to learn multiple new ways of working simultaneously. Eventually, something will give. And as I mentioned previously, don't change your practice management system and implement automation in the same year. Don't make Dave's mistake. You don't want people to quit on you. And once one change is stable, then layer the next improvement. Technology compounds beautifully. Chaos does not. Timing matters. As we previously talked, I cannot stress this enough. Summer and early fall give your team room to test, ask questions, build confidence before the pressure returns. By the time January arrives, the workflow already feels normal. There's no stress, there's no rushing, there's no mistakes. Everybody understands it. This one is my favorite. Before you even purchase software, you need to ask yourself, how do I know this is working? Not, do we like it? Not, is everyone happy? Because you're not going to please everybody, but you need to define measurable success. Maybe it's reducing the data entry. Maybe it's getting returns to the reviewers faster. Maybe it's creating more consistency across all the preparers. Maybe it's reducing overtime. Whatever it is, write it down. Because if success isn't defined, you'll end up evaluating the software based on an emotion instead of a result. So for my firm, success wasn't about replacing people. It's never been that way. It was about creating capacity. I wanted my team to spend less time entering information and more time thinking critically about returns, becoming better advisors. That was the definition of our success. Here's something I see firms underestimate all of the time. Someone has to own the implementation. Not everyone, one person. Every successful implementation I've seen has one person who's become the expert first. The person everyone else comes to with questions, the person who attends training, the person who figured out things, the person who encouraged everyone else to get the work done. Research shows consistently that active sponsorship and visible leadership is one of the strongest predictors of successful organizational change. That's key right there. One leader champions everybody. This is another place where I see firms overcomplicate things. You don't have to automate your entire firm. Start with one process, one workflow, do it well, build confidence, then expand on it. Think of it like renovating your house. You don't tear apart every room at once. You finish one room at a time. Then you move to the next. Finally, celebrate. Celebrate the progress, not perfection. Sometimes we think success means everything worked perfectly, but it almost never does. Instead, celebrate the little wins. A preparer finished a return faster, a reviewer noticed fewer manual errors. A team member might say, that was actually easier than I expected. Those moments matter because every small success builds trust, and trust is what allows you to make the next improvement. If you look at this framework, you'll notice something. None of this is really about software. It's about leadership, planning, communicating, patience. That's what technology, that's what makes technology successful. Technology amplifies those things. Now, don't get me wrong, frameworks are great, but I always like seeing what this actually looks like in practice. So let me show you how this played out in my firm. Before I pull back the curtain to show you all how we approach this inside our firm, I want to remind you that every firm is different. When I first began automation, the temptation was to explore everything I could do, but I knew that would overwhelm the rollout before it even had started. So I chose one workflow. For us, it was individual tax preparation during extension season. We also decided what success would mean before we began. It wasn't about preparing more returns, it was about moving repetitive data entry away from the preparers so we could begin further ahead and spend more time reviewing and advising the client. I became the first learner. I was actually the guinea pig, if I'll be honest here. I attended all the trainings, I asked the questions, I made mistakes, and I helped the rest of the team learn the software. Then we expanded only after the process felt familiar. The team could see the value themselves, and that's when we moved forward. Let the implementation earn the right to grow. Looking back, that was the lesson. We respected the learning process. We didn't confuse implementation with transformation. Implementation is learning something new, where transformation happens over time. So now let's take a look at what actually happens once a review or once a return enters our workflow, because this is where technology begins to support our process, not driving it.
Yeah, sorry, can I say one thing there, Katie,
Yeah.
just to interject, because you said something I think really actually like really, really important for people to understand. The
Yeah.
implementation versus like the transformation, which comes later. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Implementation, whatever that might be. And this is why onboarding in January or February is so problematic, because you will get less efficient with any piece of software, like any new process that you're running. Someone came up to me at Engage and they were saying, well, like we kind of we tried it in February and then we gave up. And I'm like, cool. How many returns did you run? Six. I'm like, like six returns? It wasn't faster after six tax returns? Like, how many have you done the old way? He's like, well, we do 2,000 a year. And I've owned the practice for 15 years. So I'm like, okay, the 30,000 tax returns versus like six. It's not faster yet. You're still in the implementation phase.
Yes.
And I think that's really critical. And again, it echoes why timing is so important. But I think that's just something really worth underlining for folks is, and if you think about practice management, I would assume most people on this webinar have actually already gone through the transition to practice management, like a more modern practice management than,
Mhm.
whether that's Canopy, Carbon, TaxDome, whatever it might be. Um, that takes time. Like for me, for practice management, it took like a year basically for us to probably see more efficiency than what we had when we were running off of spreadsheets and things like that. We tried practice CS and then we kind of ran on our own like custom system. And so I think the question, you're basically alluding to this, but I just want to say this out loud for the folks on the line here is what are you allowing for a transformation, or excuse me, for an implementation phase? Like how many weeks is that before you'll evaluate? Like the timing of that evaluation is really critical, and then making sure that your team is pushing through that initial learning curve, because during the implementation phase, your staff, if they have the same amount of work and it's a busy time of year, especially if it's February, for example, they're not going to have enough capacity to do implementation, because you're also asking them to get whatever number of tax returns done per day or per week. So you haven't created space for that. So just wanted to say that out loud because I think that's a really, really insightful point.
Well, and it's practical. It's practical, right? You can't expect transformation to happen during tax season I mean, in all honesty, I think transformation takes a significant amount of time, right? Because you're learning, you're making changes, you're tweaking, you'll see as we go through kind of my work process and why we do things the way we do it because of those exact reasons. So I want to walk you through what a typical return looks like coming inside of our firm today, not because I think this is the way you need to do it, but because I think it's helpful to see how the automation fits into the real world workflow. So as I walk through this, I want you to notice something. Automation only touches part of the process. There's still the professional judgment, so keep that in mind. Everything starts the same way it always has in our firm. Our clients upload their documents and complete their digital organizer in Stanford Tax. We review what's been received after they've submitted their documents. We make sure everything we needed is there before we begin the tax return. One thing I've learned over the last couple of years is that automation doesn't completely fix information. Garbage in is garbage out. So I have a consistent intake process, and that is still incredibly important to us. Technology works best when the process feeding it is already strong. Once we have the complete information, that's where our automation begins. This is where Juno enters our workflow. Instead of my preparers entering the information from every tax document, our admin actually uploads the documents into Juno. Juno then extracts the data from those documents. Now, does that mean we're done? No, it definitely doesn't. We're still accountants. We're still responsible for reviewing the information. Professional skepticism doesn't disappear because AI is involved. But what it does eliminate is a tremendous amount of repetitive typing. Think about how much time your staff is spending entering W-2s, 1099s, brokerage statements, K-1s, multi-state K-1s. The value isn't that AI prepares the return. The value for us is that our admin now starts the tax return process by uploading to Juno and reviewing the documents. Our preparers now start further ahead. Instead of manually keying in every document into the tax software, they can now begin with reviewing the extracted information. A growing body of research on Gen AI suggests that AI delivers the greatest productivity gains when it assists professionals with routine, repetitive tasks while humans remain responsible for judgment, decision making, and quality review. Remember that. Now, Juno creates its own binder, which may be the right solution for your firm. In our firm, however, we continue using Stanford Tax for our binder and review process because that's where our team has consistency. We use Juno where it adds the most value without replacing a process that's already working for us. That's an important part of intentional implementation. You do not have to use every single feature because it exists. Technology shouldn't force you to abandon systems that are already working for you. It should strengthen the workflow you've already built. Next, the information flows to our tax software, which is ProConnect Tax. Again, this isn't about eliminating the preparer, it's about eliminating unnecessary repetition. Nobody went to school because they dreamed of typing the same information into tax software all day. Our value isn't data entry. Our value is understanding what the data actually means. Automation allows our people to spend more time doing that. And this is where I think it's important to pause because this is where our profession still shines. Automation can move information and it can organize documents and it can identify patterns, but it doesn't necessarily replace professional judgment. It doesn't know when something doesn't make sense. It doesn't recognize that a deduction is unusually high because it remembers the conversation you had with a client last year. It doesn't ask follow-up questions. It doesn't build trust, and it doesn't provide tax planning. That's our job. And honestly, I think that's exciting. I don't believe technology is replacing accountants. I believe it's changing the type of work we're able to spend our time doing. Instead of spending hours moving numbers, We're spending more time advising clients, reviewing complex issues, having better conversations. That's where our value has always been. The IRS Office of Professional Responsibility Guidance on Responsible AI Use in Tax Practice emphasizes that practitioners remain responsible for exercising professional judgment, verifying AI generated work, and complying with Circular 230 duties. AI can assist with tax, but it does not replace the practitioner's responsibility for competence and oversight. So when people ask me, has Juno changed your workflow? My answer is yes, but not in the way that many people are expecting. It didn't replace my team, it didn't replace reviewers, and it didn't replace professional judgment. It simply removed a significant amount of repetitive work. And that has allowed my team to spend more time doing work that actually creates value for our clients. Now, that sounds great, but how do you know whether your implementation is actually working? Because success isn't measured by how impressive the technology looks, it's measured by whether the firm is actually better because of it. So let's talk about how we measure that. One of the biggest mistakes I see firms make after implementing technology is they're asking the wrong questions. They ask, did we save time? Now, don't get me wrong, time absolutely matters. But if that's the only thing you're measuring, you're missing the bigger picture. Technology should improve the quality of workflow. Time savings are simply one result of that. So when we implemented Juno, I wanted to measure something meaningful. The first thing we looked at was manual touches. How many times are we asking someone to enter information that already exists somewhere else? Think about your own firm. A client uploads a W-2, someone opens it, types the information in, someone reviews it, maybe someone corrects the typo. Every manual touch is another opportunity for inefficiency and for errors. And fewer times we have to manually move information, the better. This doesn't mean to stop reviewing it. This means we're reviewing instead of retyping. And those are very different activities. Second thing we measure is speed, but probably not in the way you're thinking. I'm not asking how long did it take to prepare a return. I'm asking how long did it take for the return to become reviewer ready. That tells me whether work is moving through our firm with less friction. The work flows more naturally. Preparers spend more time reviewing than typing. The client gets a better experience and everybody wins. The third metric is my favorite, room, because that's where what we're really creating. Room for better conversations, room for planning, room for reviewing, and room to help clients. And most importantly, for us, room to breathe. One of the things I tell firm owners all the time is capacity isn't measured by how many returns you can complete. It's measured by how intentionally you can serve the clients you've chosen to work with. Now, for us, creating room meant protecting our 40-hour work weeks. It meant keeping our scheduled model. It meant replacing the feeling that every day during tax season was simply reacting to whatever showed up next. Technology created that room only because we had the systems designed to support that. You'll notice something. I never said we need to prepare 20% more returns because that's not the goal. I never said we're going to eliminate positions. That's not the goal either. My firm is built. My job is to build a better firm, a calmer firm, a more consistent firm, one where our team spends more time critically thinking and less time repeating tasks. So to me, that's a much healthier definition of success. So if you're considering implementing automation this year, I'd encourage you to think beyond the hours saved. Ask yourself three things. Did we reduce unnecessary manual work? Does work move through our firm more consistently? And did we create capacity for meaningful client service? And if your answer is yes, then you've probably built a better workflow. And that's really what we're after, anyways. Now, of course, the best workflows don't succeed unless people believe in it because technology doesn't implement itself. People do. Let's talk about the human side of automation for just a few minutes. We've talked about technology, we've talked about the workflow. Now I'd like to talk about what I believe is the most important part of any, and it's the people. Because in my experience, technology projects rarely fail because of software. They struggle because we underestimate the human side of change. As leaders, our job isn't to introduce new technology, it's to help our team feel more confident using it. Let me share 6 things that I've learned that have made the biggest difference in our firm. The first is the communicating why. When we introduce new technology, we don't start by talking about the features, we start by talking about the problem we're trying to solve. For us, the conversation wasn't, we're bringing in AI to the firm. It was, we're trying to reduce repetitive work so you can spend more time doing the work that actually requires your expertise. When people understand that change matters, they are much more likely to support it. Second, be honest about the learning curve. Whenever we introduce something new, I tell my team the same thing. As Dave mentioned before, you're not expected to master this after one training session. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay if the first few returns take longer. Learning something new is supposed to feel uncomfortable at first. If we pretend that it's not, people get discouraged when it starts feeling discouraging. So instead of expecting perfection, we expect progress. The third is to build confidence early. This goes back to something we talked about earlier. Start small, choose one workflow. Let people experience success before expanding. Confidence grows one successful experience at a time. When someone realizes, hey, this made my job easier, literally everything will change. Fourth, create consistency. One of the reasons we kept Stanford Tax as our review platform is because our team already knew it. We didn't want to change every part of our workflow at once. We wanted familiar pieces to stay familiar. Consistency reduces uncertainty, and when people know what to expect, they adopt tech much easier. Fifth, protect your culture. This one is very important to me. Technology should modernize the work. It shouldn't change your values. Our firm is built on relationships, professional judgment, client service, collaboration. None of that changes because we use AI. If anything, technology gives us more time to live out those values. And finally, make change feel safe. I think one of the biggest responsibilities we have as leaders is making people feel safe. People naturally wonder, is this replacing me? So we have to answer the question directly. In my firm, automation removes repetitive tasks. It doesn't remove people. In fact, I believe it allows people to do even more meaningful work. And that's the message I want my team to hear as we're making these changes. When I look back at our implementation, I don't think technology was the hardest part. Leading people through change was, but when we communicate clearly, set realistic expectations, build confidence, create consistency, and protect our culture and make them feel safe, technology stops feeling like disruption. It simply becomes another tool that helps your team do their best work. And that's when something really exciting starts to happen. You stop measuring success by how many minutes you saved, and you now start noticing those minutes make things possible. Because ultimately, this isn't about automation, it's about building the kind of firm you set out to build. We've spent a lot of time talking about implementation, workflows, training, change management. And I want to end this section with talking about what has made this all possible. Because for me, the goal was never to have an automated firm, it was to build a more calmer firm. One of those commitments I've made to myself when I started was that I didn't want tax season to consume our lives. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely busy days. Yes. But I also believe you can build systems that reduce unnecessary chaos. For me, when repetitive work no longer dictates the pace of the day, we gain something incredibly valuable: control. Instead of spending hours manually entering information, our team can spend time reviewing, thinking, and problem solving. That does not mean we're working less because technology is doing our job. It means we're working differently, more intentionally, and for us, that has helped protect something that matters a lot: a sustainable work week. Our firm, including myself, does not work more than 40 hours a week. We do not work weekends, even during tax season. That is not accidental. It's something we designed with the systems that protect us. And the second payoff is predictability. If you've heard me speak before, you know that I'm a huge believer in scheduling tax returns. I don't believe deadlines should control our calendar. I believe we should control our calendar. Technology supports that philosophy because when repetitive tasks take less time, our schedules actually become more predictable. We're not constantly reacting, we're planning. We're communicating expectations with clients. We're creating capacity before the pressure shows up. That's a very different way to run a firm. And I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is the real payoff isn't in the few minutes we save on a return. The payoff is what we've built: a firm that feels calmer, more intentional, more predictable, one where the team knows what to expect, our clients know what to expect, I know what to expect. That creates a better experience for everyone. And I want to draw your attention to the sentence at the bottom of the slide. Culture is the point. Technology is just how we protect it. I absolutely love this statement because I think it captures everything we've talked about today. I didn't adopt technology because I wanted the newest tools. Don't get me wrong, I'm a tech nerd at heart, but I adopted technology because I wanted to protect the culture we're building here. A firm where people enjoy coming to work, a firm where clients receive thorough advice, a firm where busy season doesn't control us and mean burnout, a firm where our team can take time off during tax season. Every tax season, I take my daughter on a vacation over spring break. Technology didn't create that culture. It simply helps us preserve it. As we wrap up today, I hope you've seen that automation isn't is the making automation stick isn't really about finding the perfect software. It's about building the right process. Technology is one piece of the puzzle. So before you leave today and start researching the next AI tool and scheduling another software demo, I'd encourage you to pause. And before you buy anything, do these three things first. Identify the biggest bottleneck, the workflow bottleneck. Ask yourself, where does work consistently pile up in my firm? Is it the client document collection? Is it data entry, the review process, waiting for information? Whatever it is, that's where you should start. Not with the newest tool, not with the flashiest AI features. Start with a problem. Because when you solve the right problem, the technology becomes much easier to choose. The second, choose one process, just one. I know it's tempting to improve everything at once. I've felt that temptation myself, but I've learned that successful firms don't transition overnight. They improve one process, they build confidence, then move to the next. That's how lasting change happens. Sequence change is what sticks. And finally, write your implementation plan before you purchase software. Ask questions like, who's going to own the implementation? When are we going to roll it out? How will we train the team? How will we measure success? What does success even look like now in 6 months, and even a year. Because if you can't answer those questions before you buy, the software isn't the problem, the plan is. Technology should support a strategy, it shouldn't become the strategy. And I think there's a bigger lesson that I can leave you with today. Automation isn't a switch you can flip, it's a journey, a thoughtful decision at a time, one workflow at a time, one improvement at a time. The firms that are the most successful with automation aren't necessarily the ones with the most technology. They are the ones that implement it intentionally. Now, when I started my firm, I wasn't trying to build the most automated firm. I was trying to build a firm that supported my team, served my clients well, and gave me the flexibility to build a business around my life and my family, not the other way around. Automation has absolutely helped us do that. Not because we bought the right software, but because we were intentional about how we implemented it. So as you leave today, I hope you don't leave any, I hope you don't leave thinking about buying the next software. I hope you leave thinking about the next problem to solve because that's where meaningful change begins. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. And I want to give everybody an opportunity for me to answer some more questions for you if you have them.
Yeah, perfect. Just seeing these coming in. There's questions about some of the specific integrations, things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of thank yous coming out here. Um, yeah, if people have specific questions, we have a couple minutes left here. Yeah, Katie, they were asking about like the specific problem you're trying to solve with your firm as you think about further automation. I mean, I think you did a good job of defining that, right? Like,
Yeah.
would I like how you said room, like defining room to do a better job with clients and often making it fit your life and not having sounds like 40 hours was another one of the goals.
Yeah, that was one of the goals. I personally didn't want to create a firm that pushes out a lot of tax returns. That wasn't my goal ever. So I needed to intentionally build that process because there's a shortage of accountants here today, right? So
Yeah.
we are all busy, and I wanted to be intentional with the type of clients that I work with, how we work in our firm. And I know that I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. That's what makes us all great and unique. If clients don't like the workflow process that I have, I will gladly refer them to a different accountant that might better suit their needs. But this is how we designed our firm so that we could protect ourselves.
Exactly.
I see Trent has asked, what are the components of various software stack, practice management? So for us, we use Financial Sense. For our practice management taxes, ProConnect, we use their Intuit Tax Advisor as well for tax planning. We use Stanford Tax for document collection for tax returns, and we're a Google shop, so we use Google for all of our document storage on our internal side, and we use Financial Sense for the client portal to share tax returns and whatnot with them. Let's see here. What other questions? What do you guys do with the input staff after implementing Juno? So we're a small firm. I'm guessing this is Renee's question. I'm a super small firm. It's myself, and I have a part-time preparer, a part-time admin, and a full-time bookkeeper. And for us, my admin is able to now speed along the process with my tax preparer with getting the data into the tax return, where my preparer is now just entering the last few things that didn't necessarily import with Juno, doing the return and finalizing it and sending it over to me for review. I'm still the ultimate reviewer in our firm at this point.
Yeah, and the preparation staff, one comment there from my firm, they just get it further in review. So it actually was like
Mhm.
review staff where I realized some capacity. And one of the things that I had them do, because they do also create some capacity there, is more like the delivery letter along with a return, right? So like that shift into advisory work. Um, but mainly a better job on self-review is what I would
Yeah.
say. You really want them to be able to sit down and take the time to do a great job of self-review there.
I
But good
agree.
question.
I agree with that too, because, I think when you become a reviewer in general, you see things differently with preparing a tax return, right? When you're doing the data entry, you're just doing the data entry. You don't
Exactly.
necessarily understand the full effect on a tax return. But when you're actually reviewing it, it's something like clicks, and you're like, oh, okay, I can see how that makes a change. So for me, this has been really an upskill for my preparer as she's using Juno to input the documents and review everything to make sure the data is there that needs to be there. So, I mean, really at the same time, you're upskilling your team as well.
I completely agree with that. We've seen that in practice, and I know we're at time,
Mhm.
so we'll wrap here in just a minute. But we've seen that in practice. People sometimes will say to me, like, well, how are we going to train accountants in the future? And I'm like, to be honest with you, like my accountants, I think are getting better training now than they were historically because they have time to actually sit and think about it versus just like
Yeah.
typing in all the numbers and trying to figure out where it goes in ProConnect
Well,
in
and
our
they become
case.
better advisors too, like they're
Yeah,
learning more and they can spot things where when you're just doing data entry, there's a lot of room for error in my opinion.
exactly. Well, Katie, thank you so much. I think this has been super helpful. I know people have it's so helpful in this industry to have other firm owners talk about what they've done. And I appreciate you sharing transparently like what worked and what hasn't. And I
Mhm.
think there's some really good insights in here for folks. Maybe tell them really quickly how they can get a hold of you if people have other questions. I know you've got a QR code
Yep.
on here,
Yep.
but how do you want people to reach out to you?
Yeah. So the QR code will take you to LinkedIn, and you guys can message me on there if you have additional questions. I'd be happy to answer them. Or otherwise, just go to LinkedIn and search M. Katie Healy, and you will find me there.
I love it. Well, thank you so much again. And for folks, if you have any Juno related questions, obviously you can go to our website and reach out to our team that way, or you can go to contact@juno.tax if you want to do that. But appreciate everyone taking the time today. Hope you're enjoying the late summer right before the extension push here.
Yeah.
But thank you, Katie, again for sharing everything. And yeah, I really appreciate the insights here.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, everybody have a good afternoon.